Hello and welcome to Bantams Debrief, and in this what I'll be doing is playing one of the matches, in this case the Forest Green match, that I didn't show in the previous episode of Bantams Online's Football Manager journey. We'll be talking about some of the things going on in real life at Bradford City, and at the moment the main talking point is the transfer window. The January transfer window is open, and although it's been quiet in the first half of the transfer window, it is starting to heat up, what with the latest with Jake Young and his offer from Carlisle United that has been knocked back by Bradford City, and what they've done since then in saying that we are asking too much for him and we should lower our asking price. Is this their way of trying to unsettle Jake Young, or is he already unsettled? Who knows? Will this lead to him possibly handing in a transfer request to ramp up the pressure? And also, why Carlisle United of all clubs? After all, they've just signed Harry Lewis. Is there any link between Harry Lewis going to Carlisle United and, of course, the strong rumours, which I think are probably more than rumours now, about Carlisle United being in for Jake Young? Now, given their coffee club bromance, or whatever you want to call it, clearly it does start to look like these two have been talking and maybe have engineered transfers for themselves to the same club. We'll look at all that in a little bit more detail and go over the points. Yeah, so the transfer window started off slow enough. Part of my suspicion was the way the team was set up. It was very much set up for Jake Young to return to the action, and that team be set up in a way that will best complement him. Now, bearing this in mind, I do suspect that the news that Jake Young wanted to leave Bradford City must have come as quite a surprise to the manager, Graham Alexander. If that's indeed the case, don't forget, and I think the first rumblings of that was when he decided he wasn't fit enough to be able to train, pulled out of training injured, and we haven't been able to pick him because, as we all know, he can only play for 2 clubs in one season, and if he plays for Bradford City, we know he's going to be staying at Bradford City till the end of the season at least. So all eyes are on that to see whether he will actually feature or not. The other bit of news was when Carlisle made their bid for Harry Lewis and it was accepted. Now, this is interesting because we know that Harry Lewis and Jake Young get along really well, and the timing of all this happening has to be taken into consideration. You can't just look at them as completely separate situations, as some people want to think it is. You know, I hear things from some of the same people who are like, well, Jake Young hasn't said anything about wanting to go to Carlisle. No. He's not going to necessarily come out and say he wants to go to Carlisle. What is going on behind the scenes isn't going to be necessarily said. Graham Alexander didn't say that we're going to lose Harry Lewis, but we did. But what he did say a couple of days before that is it's going to be a, in quotes, difficult transfer window. And he also stated that we should expect the unexpected. Now, he didn't outright say that Harry Lewis was leaving, but this is the way that these things are approached in the media, and you've got to know to read between the lines. Simon Parker at the Telegraph and Argus has been doing exactly the same, with him picking up on quotes from Graham Alexander, one being a response to people who are asking why Graham Alexander doesn't just play Jake Young. Well, Graham Alexander did drop a hint by saying that he cannot pick a player if he's injured, and if Jake Young was available, he would be in the team. It's a pretty clear statement. He wants Jake Young to play. He wants to keep Jake Young. He plans to have him in that team. The only reason he's not is because any manager worth the salt isn't going to pick an injured player, and therefore he will only pick him if he's available, and Jake Young is the one who's made himself not available, not Graham Alexander. And with this clue from Simon Parker, the key word is he. When he says he's comfortable enough and declares himself fit, this is not Graham Alexander who's keeping him out of the team. This is Jake Young keeping himself out of contention, whether it's genuine or whether he's making sure he doesn't play for another team because he wants to go somewhere else. You can make your own mind up. There is clues coming out from Graham Alexander, and that's good news because it shows that he is trying to communicate with fans in the best way that he can. So he is doing that. There's only so much he's allowed to say, or he can say without getting a bollocking from upstairs. He's doing a really good job of sort of providing us with some hints at what's really going on. So keep an eye out for stuff like that. I certainly will, and I'll make a point of putting them on my X account at Bantams Online. If you're not already following me, do take a moment to follow me at Bantams Online on X, formerly known as Twitter. And back to developments about this Jake Young story. Carlisle boss Paul Simpson has been complaining that the asking price for him is far too high. Now, this is fair enough because it most certainly is what's known as a fuck off price that Bradford City have given to Carlisle United over Jake Young. And I suspect that this quote, okay, it's come out of the mouth of the manager, but not necessarily from the manager, possibly from the powers that be at the club to put pressure on now and try and get maybe Jake Young to force Bradford City's hands with a transfer request, or perhaps invite other clubs fully in the confidence that they know Jake Young wants to sign for them by saying he's a player who we all like but we can't afford him. That says Carlisle are interested, but the asking price is way too much. And why not? We can afford to say, well, sod you, if you want Jake Young, you're going to have to pay a premium because we'd happily keep him. But in reality, what's he going to be like if we do keep him? Because we know what happened with Harry Lewis when he got his offer from Barnsley, and since then he was never the same player again for us. And don't forget, with Jake Young, this could well happen to him, devaluing him in the summer, meaning that a club will then come along, we won't want him, and they'll pick him off at a cheap price. I'm fairly sure a lot of Harry Lewis's value dropped since the summertime. I'd be interested to know what we turned down from Barnsley compared to what we got for him from Carlisle United. I suspect Barnsley offered more than what Carlisle United offered us in January, and that is what could happen with Jake Young. And it could be a message from Carlisle United to say to Bradford City, you know what happened with Harry Lewis, don't let that happen to Jake Young. So we have to watch this space. There will be tough negotiations going on, and Carlisle will be no mugs. Don't forget that. You know, for all Ryan Sparks' faults, we're no mugs. We want to get top price for him. We want to hang on for the right price. The question is he going to overplay his hand on this one? Will his resolve be tested? Will Sparks react to this? He reacts to a lot of things. Carlisle might already be aware of that as well. So they're now testing our resolve. Do we really want to keep him that much? It might be the case that he wants to play with his mate Harry Lewis again, reform that coffee club, and also get paid a bit extra from what he's already getting at Bradford City. And an unhappy player on a relatively low wage compared to other players in the team is not going to be a happy player. He's not going to be at his best, and we've already seen what happened to Harry Lewis. So I still think if we've got any sense, he'll be gone before this January window closes, and the destination will most likely be Carlisle United still. The question is, who is going to get the best deal out of this? Hopefully it's Bradford City. We'll lower our asking price, we'll meet somewhere in the middle, and something sensible will be organised. But I'm sorry to any Bradford City fans out there who keep saying we'll keep Jake Young, they have to pay the asking price that we're asking. In reality, we could end up with an unhappy Jake Young, a dud of a player who is running down the value of a transfer fee. If it's anything under 250,000, I think Ryan Sparks is going to have a difficult time selling it to a lot of the supporters. But don't for one moment think this is a cut and dry deal. There's a lot that could develop, and probably will, in the coming weeks. But at the moment, they're doing the right thing. Absolutely doing the right thing. you want Jake Young as well, you're going to have to pay a premium. Jake Young wants to go. This is nailed on, we know it. And I think this is where we made a mistake in the past with Nahki Wells. We knew he wanted to go to Huddersfield and people mistook that as Nahki Wells having the upper hand and us having to take less money. No, I said at the time we should have been able to get more for him because he wanted to go. And that then puts us in a strong position. They want him, he wants to go. Well, you're going to have to pay a premium. I think the destination is nailed on that he wants to go to Carlisle United. The question is, will they stump up the cash? Will we come to an agreement? Probably the agreement might not be as much as what we're asking at the moment, but it'll be somewhere in between what they're offering and what we're asking. And that will probably be good business because, in fairness, he's not on the highest wage at the club. It's not like we're offloading a high earner, which then will bring me on to Verdane Oliver, where just by saving his wage, you're going to be able to bring in a replacement anywhere near his quality. You're not. It's just going to be a pretty average player for League Two that we're going to be able to replace him with if his wage is in and around the £1.5–2 grand mark that it's supposed to be, and that's not just Football Manager, it's other sources as well. And you do have to be able to trust some sources to be in and around where that wage is. And in comparison to other players in the team, we all accept that Andy Cook is the highest earner in all these other sources as well. So it's reasonable to say that the wage that Jake Young is in mid to lower bracket of earners at our club is probably accurate as well. So you can't just write them things off for nothing unless you've got some evidence that says you know exactly what his wage is. So it is fair to say, letting Jake Young go cheap, we are not going to benefit at all from it, so we want a premium for him, and that's sensible. That brings us on to rumours about Verdane Oliver. He's been linked with a move to Stevenage. Now, it sounds an interesting one, does that? Yeah, you could see him playing for Stevenage, but I can't imagine there's many teams in League One that would want his services. He's a hard one, actually, to sell because he is at the top end of our earners. We can't just get rid of him unless somebody wants him, and that club that wants him has to be able to afford to take on these wages. Now, in theory, we can get a transfer fee for him, but it'll be good business for us with this one. If we can get him off at zero, it doesn't matter about that. It's just getting a player that we don't have any need for anymore, that's overpaid, off the wage bill. That's what it's about. And we can get a decent player in with the money we'll save on his wage. So it's different to the Jake Young situation where Jake Young's on a pretty low wage and we're not going to be able to get somebody that decent in to replace him. That means then, because he's under contract, we want a high transfer fee for him. With Verdane Oliver, we're going to be grateful for anybody being able to pay his wage and take him off our hands because he's at the higher end of the League Two earners, let alone being one of the highest earners in our club. So that means most clubs below us, who you'd imagine might be interested in Verdane Oliver, wouldn't necessarily be able to afford to pay him the wage that he's getting here, so there's no incentive for him to move. Kudos for getting rid of him if we can. That will be an absolute super move for us. It will free up a decent sized wage for us. Who cares about the fee with that? Get him off the wage bill, get him moved on. So there's a bit of breaking news as I talk about this, and turns out the rumours about Stevenage were close. It's not a permanent move, but he is going to Stevenage to link up with Steve Evans on loan. Now, that to me suggests that Stevenage aren't prepared to stump up all of his wage. Hopefully they're taking a sizable amount of it. Most likely we'd have given him over for free basically to get his entire wage off our wage bill. We haven't. We've managed to do a loan deal till the end of the season, which just seems to me that they're not prepared to pay him the same amount we're paying him, and we'll be paying him in and around probably most of what he's getting at Bradford City, but not all of it. It's not the excellent deal that I would have hoped for of us managing to get him off our books permanently, but it'll do. It'll help us through to the summer where we've got more time to try and find a team that will take him, and who knows, if he does really well for Stevenage, they might then be prepared to pay that sort of money. But it hasn't worked out for him at Bradford City. He's on his way to Stevenage on loan, and we've got a bit more in our budget that we can play with now to be able to sign more players. And I'm just going to wrap this one up by talking about Tyreek Wright returning to Bradford City on loan from Plymouth Argyle, and this must have really cost a bit to get through the door, this loan deal. And with everything that's been going on at the club, it does feel very much like Ryan Sparks' PR job. Bearing in mind Harry Lewis had just gone out, we're expecting probably to lose Jake Young as well. This is a good time to bury bad news, and in true Ryan Sparks style, this rabbit came out of the hat. It's not the first time it's happened, where the decision making isn't always for football reasons, it seems to be more about PR. The moment the heat starts coming on top for Ryan Sparks or Stefan Rupp or both, then something gets pulled out of a hat. Last time, or most famously actually, was Mark Hughes being hired as manager. There was no other managers on the table at the time that any of the fans were impressed with, and most certainly it would have been Ryan Sparks' head on the block. I can say this with a clear conscience because at the time I said it, that hiring Mark Hughes was a bad idea, and it wasn't great for football reasons because Derek Adams getting sacked, having gone to all the work of trying to free up budget for the summer. Mark Hughes had a reputation for blowing budgets, overpaying players, giving them contracts that they didn't deserve, and that was the last thing Bradford City needed at the time. And you have to ask, where was the due diligence when that appointment was made? Simply put, Mark Hughes, big name, sells season tickets, job done. Anyway, with Tyreek Wright, on the bright side, he's an excellent player. Yes, he struggled at Plymouth, but we know what he's about, we know what he's capable of. Anybody comparing him to Dion Pereira, completely different character altogether. When Dion joined the club, he was injured. He'd been injured when he'd been on loan at Yeovil. It was considered by his own manager as strange why he was injured all of a sudden when he went out on loan to these lower division clubs. And Dion Pereira suddenly got fit again when Mark Hughes got the job as well. And also a bit of a warning from his manager about doubts about his future when he returns to Luton Town. So this isn't a case of there being a risk of him being like Dion Pereira. Totally different mentalities involved. Dion Pereira, in my opinion, will never make it any higher than he is as a professional footballer. He is destined for the National League South or lower, but that is not the case with Tyreek Wright. He's just at a better club with much more competition for places, and it's much more difficult in the Championship. Granted, he struggled in League One, but it's still not League Two. He should do just fine. I do have to question where the idea for bringing back Tyreek Wright came from, because Graham Alexander, again one of the hints we've had from him in his interviews, said that he wasn't sure what the budget was, now Harry Lewis, and it seems like there isn't communication there. Now I do wonder partly whether this is down to the reactiveness of Ryan Sparks and his sensitivity to criticism, because let's face it, there's plenty of evidence to say he is quite sensitive to criticism. Some of it I've seen firsthand, but that's another story. Now, considering only a week before, Graham Alexander was trying to offload players in those wide positions, I can't imagine he's suddenly out of thin air gone to Ryan Sparks or Stephen Gent and gone, you know what I want? I want that lad that you had a year ago who played for you, who were really good, who ended up going to Plymouth Argyle. I just can't see that being the way the conversation about Tyreek Wright went. So you've got to ask yourself, who came up with the idea to sign Tyreek Wright? Whether it's Stephen Gent who suggested him to Graham Alexander, you do wonder whether someone's had a word in the ear of Gent and asked about perhaps signing Tyreek Wright as he'd be a popular addition to the team and get the fans back on side at what is a difficult time. And these things keep happening, as we know. So yeah, it is a strange one. Admittedly, I'm not going to deny, I'm pleased with the signing. It's a good signing. I am a bit concerned about whether this is going to mean sacrificing Brad Halliday or other players like Bobby Poynton. Would people maybe have preferred Brad Halliday to have been offered a new contract instead, or offering contracts to other players like Bobby Poynton to make sure we've got them safe? And of course, they've got sell-on value as well. And at the same time, I do have reservations about whether Brad Halliday is signing a contract or not, because we haven't heard anything on that side. And I do wonder a little bit whether Graham Alexander's warning about expecting the unexpected might even extend to us not being able to offer Brad Halliday enough to stay, because as it stands, when he had no money in his budget and he's having to free up the budget, then he's not in a position to offer Brad Halliday a new contract anyway. But as soon as he'd got rid of Harry Lewis, brought in a new goalkeeper, there's a few extra grand there. Maybe if he'd have got rid of another player, say like Verdane Oliver, not brought in Tyreek Wright, that would have left quite a bit of money for him to negotiate with existing players that are there that we want to keep for next season, knowing full well we'll probably survive this season, no problem, but a promotion push might just be out of the question. And regardless, we could probably get a couple of cheaper loan signings in who might just plug those gaps that could get us over the line, so it wouldn't be a write-off. But it does seem like there's possibly better ways to spend the money that it's no doubt costing us to get Tyreek Wright back. But I'm going to leave it there anyway. The next time I do a Bantams debrief, I don't know when. If there's any news that crops up, I will do. I'll show you some of the matches. This one was a 1-1 draw that I had on Football Manager with Forest Green Rovers. It didn't quite go to plan. I wanted to get the 3 points out of that game as well. I took 3 points at Notts County, took 3 points against Accrington, and I was thinking this would have been a bonus with 3 points in this match, but it wasn't to be. If you haven't watched my Football Manager journey already, then episode 1 and episode 2 are both available, and is also a tutorial for anybody who wants to download the add-on that I'm using, which makes it more realistic from a Bradford City point of view. There's information on the description on episode 1 and a tutorial, and you can download it yourself and install it. Anyway, all there is left to say is thanks for watching, and if you have enjoyed watching this, please do hit the like button, it all helps, and leave a comment about your thoughts as well, whether you'd like to see Halliday offered a new contract, or what you think of the Tyreek Wright signing, and how do you feel about the Verdane Oliver deal out on loan. Let me know in the comments, and for now, I'll catch you later.